they let Corey Perry go. It's like, why did you do that? He was actually having fun, showing the young guys how it's done, and scoring the odd goal here. Why would you let that go?
Because the boys having more fun now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Episode 12.
12.
Talkbots. This episode, I'm Karl.
I'm not.
Adam allowed me to pick the topic this week, which I decided was going to be
Diarrhea medicine.
Yeah, like totally. Such an underappreciated topic.
Real quick, really, is it? Because there's really only one. It's really Pepto Bismol. That's really it.
Pepto Bismol isn't diarrhea medicine.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Pepto Bismol is to settle your stomach.
And the Slurpee machine that's coming out of your butt.
Yeah. See, I don't take Pepto Bismol for diarrhea. I take the pill there, Imodium.
Oh, right.
That's the one that stops the stream.
Yeah. Oh, well,
well.
Well, maybe that's episode 13, because apparently there's more to talk about.
And no, listeners, that's not this week's topic. This week's topic is the evolution of getting music over the years and how it's changed and evolved and everything. It only occurs to me now that I never came up with a witty kind of phrase for the topic for the episode. Now we always had like little witty one-liner kind of phrases to label the episode. Mm-hmm. I never did think one for this episode. So if one comes to you,
right,
feel free to just dive in and interrupt me at any point, right, and suggest something.
Sure.
So, what's your history of how you got your music and how it affected your life and over the years kind of thing? You know what I mean? Starting from when you first started listening to music.
Sure.
I'm interested in your perspective because it'll be definitely a newer perspective than mine.
Yeah, but okay, you're right. But really how that's going to affect it is simply that you're going to have maybe
older
one
stuff. Yeah.
Maybe one type of media older than me.
Right.
Because vinyl has come back.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So, anyway.
And are you back into vinyl?
I was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So where it all started would have been probably vinyl, my mom's. But I wasn't really into it. Where my first introduction to vinyl was actually George Carlin, 7 Words You Can't Say on TV. That album.
Nice.
Anyway, so that doesn't really count as the music, but that's where, and then she had like Beatles records, Wings records, just shit like that. And so that's where it started. My dad drove an old 77 Cordoba, and it had 8-track in it.
Nice.
But he didn't have any 8-tracks.
Oh.
Because he was never into music.
Right.
Right.
He'll listen to the radio and that's the end of it.
If that. Yeah. More driving around in silence. Which is funny, because that's how I prefer to drive too.
Really?
Absolutely.
You don't listen to music while you drive?
Generally not. No.
Oh, wow.
No, generally not.
There would appear to be something missing if there was no music going in the car.
Yeah.
Having said that, though, I got to tune it right down when I'm getting close to home, and I got to really pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah, because our stupid monkey brains don't fucking work very well. Yeah. So then how my music started was cassette.
Right.
The very first tape I got was Stone Cold Rhymin' by Young MC.
Mm-hmm.
And I got that for Christmas from somebody. And it was totally fucking random. I had no idea who this dude was. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, I didn't have a means of playing a tape.
Right.
But that's where it started. And I quickly must have gotten a...
Ghetto Blaster? Did you get a ghetto blaster?
I was trying to not use that phrasing, but yeah.
Well, that's what they were called.
Yeah. Well, I never had a ghetto blaster. I never had a big silver Sony ghetto blaster. I got some shitty Sanyo.
Yeah, well...
Right, whatever. But
I was a white guy, so anything that was portable I considered a ghetto blaster.
Right.
Yeah.
A white guy talking about ghetto blasters.
Exactly.
Anyway, so... And the first album that I think that I bought... There were two tapes that stick out in my head of being like the first ones. And I don't know if I bought them, but I got them both new. Which is the MC Hammer album.
Mm-hmm.
And the Billy Joel album with We Didn't Start the Fire.
Mm.
Now, I don't know what that album's actually called.
Me neither.
But those were them. That's where it started.
So all of your purchased music at first was pre-recorded cassette. At first.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And then from there went to... And that was around for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could still buy 8-tracks. You could still buy records.
Yeah.
When I got tapes.
Right.
Right. So the time between tapes and CDs was years. So tapes was it. So I moved to... And I didn't really get into music for a long time. Like, I liked it a bit, but it wasn't until I was probably 11 or 12. Summer of when I was 11. Grade 7 to grade 8 is when music started to fucking happen. But I would get tapes and you'd record it off the radio.
Mm-hmm.
You pirate it and yell at DJs for interrupting the beginning of the song.
Yeah, exactly.
You fucking dicks. Phoning in, trying to request a song that you want. Staying up really late to listen to that radio show that would play the type of music that you want. So there's a half an hour that you might get a song that you like.
And then?
And then it was CDs. And how that took place is I was behind the times on that. It felt. My best friend, who I was fortunate enough to live in the same duplex as. It was fucking wild. But his dad was a musician, a jazz musician, and just obviously obsessed with music, and huge CD library. And they got him a ghetto blaster that played CDs, and for Christmas, and he got a bunch of money, and he went and he bought a bunch of CDs from A&B Sound downtown.
Yeah.
And I still had tapes, so I bought a couple tapes that he had on CD, or we pirated, whatever. And then eventually, I got a boombox for Christmas, and I then got a bunch of money, and I went to A&B Sound. That's where it really started from my memory, is when music really became a thing in my life. And I had to be, I think, like I say, it felt like the summer of 11 to 12, so maybe it was Christmas of when I was 11. And,
lucky.
Yeah.
I never had music that young in my possession.
But it's funny.
We'll get to that story later.
It's funny, I talk about it like this, and I said that I was really young, but as it's coming out of my mouth, and I'm like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe 11 years old is about when a lot of people seem, or maybe it's even a little young that you get really into music. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it was CDs. It was CDs for fucking ever. Actually, I think it was CDs forever until I started
copies.
Well, it felt like forever. When you're fucking young, everything feels like forever.
Right.
But I was probably 16 when I started to recognize what MP3s were. And then there was no looking back. Because back at 16, when the internet was the Wild West, you just pirated everything and there were no consequences. So I did. I had more MP3s than anybody did. I'd make CDs for people and crap like that.
At its peak, how many MP3s did you have in your possession?
Oh, I couldn't even tell you.
Tens of thousands?
Tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Tens of thousands. Like those DVD binders? that you get is filled of just burnt MP3 CDs.
Yeah.
But it didn't make CDs go away, because when I was 17, I worked at a record store for probably 2, maybe 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I acquired a lot of music and I was going to a lot of local music shows. Between 12 and 17 years old, we were going to local shows every weekend, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. And so it was just consumption of music, and CDs were still that. So CDs didn't stop being a thing, I think, until I stopped going to shows all the time. So probably when I was 18 is when CDs sort of stopped. Might have been later. It's hard to... it must have been a little later.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was 20... the reason why I say that is because I broke up with my first long-term girlfriend. What's up, Nikki? When I was 24. And I seem to remember taking a music hiatus, because her and I liked the same music. We listened to music together. It was a part of our relationship.
So you couldn't listen to that stuff
I couldn't listen to music at all.
Right.
Yeah. And I did that with all of my long-term relationships, and I always took a music break because I had to. And then maybe it was then is when I'm just like, I'm not going to buy CDs anymore, because it was more accessible. This was post Napster. This was post LimeWire. Pre-BitTorrent. Yeah, and then how did it go? Yeah, then it was torrents, acquiring them that way. Streaming services. Mm-hmm. Service, singular.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't like Spotify when it first came out, as we've talked about before.
Yep.
And, I don't know, Bandcamp, shit like that. But I haven't bought music, if you don't count my monthly subscription.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't bought music in probably 5 or 6 years, maybe 6 or 7 years.
Not surprised.
Yeah.
It's definitely been longer for me.
And the last ones I bought were still, you could still get them on streaming, but they were just tiny. Yeah. And I was like, what the fuck?
Right.
Let's give them all of the money.
Yeah.
And the albums were really like $8. Like nothing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and now where I am is overwhelmed with music to the point where often I don't listen to it because I just have too much.
Right.
Oversaturated with music. It's really quite frustrating. That's sort of I think that's mostly my journey with the medium. I never touched mini discs.
Jeez, I didn't even mention mini discs in my timeline.
Yeah.
But those were definitely a thing for a tiny period
Tiny bit of time for people who had a lot of money to throw away.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Mini discs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not even going to mention those. Yeah, my journey with music was weird. Like, it was like, and I'll get to it eventually, because I want to go through kind of an interesting timeline of how music was available over the years, and then I'll get into some, I hope, interesting stories about my music journey over the years. But I was putting a timeline together of what formats music was available in, and it turns out that almost 100 years ago is when vinyl records first started to become a regular thing. As 78s.
Oh, yeah.
They finally came up with a universal recording standard, and interestingly, it was based on the speed of the motors that made the records.
Right.
That determined how fast the record had to spin to play it back, which was so bizarre. Like, it was just an arbitrary choice based on the manufacturing process that had been chosen, which I thought was kind of funky. And so that would have been like 1925.
Okay.
And then 78s were around until 1948, right after the war was over. And then 33 1/3 microgroove records came out, invented by Columbia Records. Mm-hmm. So now you could fit a lot more music on an album, almost 30 minutes a side, almost. And those lasted obviously for decades, but the first 45 RPM single, those little things with the big fat openings in the middle that needed special adapters to play, they came out as singles in 1949, but you couldn't play them on record players that could play 33 and a third. So they actually made record players that only played 45s. The idea being that, kids would walk around with 45 record players.
Sure.
And take them to their friends' houses with their collection of 45 singles, and that would be the new thing. Albums would be for adults and, fuddy-duddies and professional collectors and stuff. It never worked out that way. People did collect 45s, but then they also collected albums too. Multi-speed record players that could play any speed of record didn't come out till the 50s. And then they came up with the little plastic adapters so you could play 45s on them too. Because the spindle was just big enough to play 33s.
Wait, I got a question about that.
Yeah.
About the 45s and the hole in it.
Yeah.
Was that, or do you know?
Yeah.
Is that, it feels like a proprietary marketing tactic.
It was.
To make you buy one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. It was to buy a different record player.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
Okay.
They didn't want you to be able to play it on the same record player as albums.
Just to move more product.
Yeah.
More record player product.
Yep, totally.
Okay.
Which, as it turns out, it's funny how the music industry thinks they know what they're doing and will try to socially engineer the buying public, and then they turn around and go, no, I'll take the one that plays everything.
Mm-hmm.
And screw your little 45 only record player.
Right.
Then came something that was a really niche music format, reel-to-reel.
Oh, yeah. Sure, man.
Started in 1954.
Oh, my God, I remember
Expensive as hell. Like, you couldn't touch these things unless you were rich or, somebody trying to show off to their friends. And it's not even like you could buy pre-recorded music on a reel-to-reel. You could only use it to record music. They tried to sell pre-recorded music on reels, but nobody could buy them because by the time you finished paying for your reel-to-reel, that was it. You were wiped out. But the one thing about reel-to-reel tape is that they were the first tape and they were also high-quality tape. So if you wanted the best possible recording of music you had on another format, reel-to-reel was the way to go until they came out with compact cassettes. Battery-powered portable music players, record players with their own built-in amps and speakers didn't come out till 1955, made by a company called Philco. And then the thing that changed everything, 1964 compact cassette arrives. And at first they suck because there's only one kind and they don't really record very good quality and there's hiss in the background, and then they invented Dolby and all that shit and that fixed that problem, and then they came up with tape with special formulations to make them better. By 1968 compact cassettes were selling really well, and they even started putting music on tapes and selling them in stores. This is the first thing that actually made the sharing of restricted music and pirating possible. And this was the first time the Recording Industry Association of America, the RIAA, lost their shit. Because they basically went, oh my God, cassettes are going to ruin the music industry because people are just going to make copies of their friends' albums and singles. And they won't buy original music anymore and will go bankrupt.
Right.
Which of course never happened.
Right.
And then they just jumped on the bandwagon and started releasing music on tape, which it turned out worked out pretty good because the average consumer didn't have the time or the energy to make their own tapes.
Well, of course not.
Only junkies like you and me did that. Most people wanted to buy tapes with the music already on it, so that you could throw it in the deck in the car or in your boombox or whatever the case may be, and away you go. 8-track came out a year later, and the idea behind 8-track, of course, was because if you were listening to music on a cassette, you had to fast forward to get to the next song. But in an 8-track, all you had to do was press a button and it took you right to the next track.
Right.
That was revolutionary,
Right.
especially in a car. So 8-track decks were installed in cars almost, starting with Thunderbirds and Mustangs in 1965. Sales on 8-tracks peaked in 1978, right when I graduated high school. 1978 vinyl unit sales peaked and began their decline. 1979, yeah, so I'm just going to leave the history lesson there because this is where I'd like to talk about my actual journey through music formats. Because when I was growing up, I didn't have any money to buy music, so I had to go with what my parents listened to. And my parents listened to old people music. We were always tuned into the old people music radio station. The only kind of music we had at home was old people music, so like, Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, Roger Whittaker,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Kingston Trio, big band, jazz, and not even like, out there jazz, regular jazz.
Sure. Yep.
And the only way that I could get access to what my peers were listening to was on the radio. But because my dad always had the car radio tuned to his music, the only time I actually got access to music I should be listening to was at friends' houses.
Okay. There was no radio in the house?
No.
Okay.
No.
There was a record player in the house?
A record player. And that was it.
Okay.
Then I got my first transistor radio. And that changed everything. Because then I could listen to the radio station I wanted to listen to, but not very good quality sound.
Sure.
But hey, you take what you can get.
Absolutely.
And then...
so this is what? When? 70?
This would be the 70s.
Early or late?
Both.
So it started...
All the way through the 70s,
Okay.
pretty much.
You got your transistor radio, what?
73-ish.
Yeah.
74. I had it throughout high school.
Okay.
And then I made friends with this guy named David Calusi.
Fucking David Calusi.
And he was a cool guy.
Uh-huh.
He dressed differently from everybody else. And he had music. And he knew music.
Sure.
And he could play music. He was an aspiring DJ. He had equipment. He had a mixer. He wanted to operate lights when he performed, and he would do it at the community center in our town. And he had milk crates full of albums and singles and the whole 9 yards. And he would DJ at like community dances and high school dances and stuff. Mm-hmm. And because I was his friend, I would get on stage with him and watch what he was doing and stuff. And I'd be like, "Can I do that?" And he'd be like, "No.
Yeah, you can't touch my shit.
You can't touch my stuff." And he said, "But I'll tell you what, I took an old organ keyboard and disassembled it from the chassis, and I hooked up all the keys to solenoids that could operate lights."
Oh, yeah.
Powered by AC.
Sweet.
So
cool.
We'll set up a rack of lights and whatnot. And I've got a couple of the toggle switches hooked up to things like a disco ball and shit like that and strobes. And the other lights, you can operate them by playing the keyboard. You play the keyboard along with the music and the lights will respond to what you're pressing on the keys.
Wild.
And I'm just like, okay, anything to be a part of this thing that's happening, because I saw that he had the crowd in the palm of his hands. He was controlling the party. He was controlling the atmosphere of all the people that had assembled.
Sure.
And stuff.
Right.
And I was mesmerized by that power.
Cool.
Never mind the fact that I was getting in touch with whatever music was relevant and current. And eventually he actually, once he got to know me and trust me, he'd say, "Hey, you want to spin some tunes?" And I'd be like, "Fuck yeah." and I started helping out actually playing the music. And I'd be like, what can I play? And he'd be like, go through the music and pick what you want. But he'd kind of give me tips where, you want to play some danceable stuff for a while, and then you want to put the odd ballad in there so that the guys and the girls could do their thing on the dance floor, right? And then you get back into some faster stuff again, and then you put some more
formula.
The old formula. And I was really enthralled by that, but I couldn't participate in it on my own because I just didn't have the resources or the money to do it. So my musical journey was one of a spectator. I was a very late bloomer when it came to discovering the music that my peers were listening to. They were into the Styx and the Supertramp and the Floyd and the Zeppelin and the Nazareth and the Boston and all the rest of it that was happening in the late 70s. And I was just like, what? Super what? And then, they'd play some albums for me. And
what? Super what?
It might be like the second time I ever heard a song, but only this time now I'm really paying attention to it.
Right.
Because I'm getting to hear it on some fucking hi-fi stereo equipment.
Right.
And I'm really hearing the music now for the first time. And being totally envious.
Oh, yeah.
Now things really start to ramp up.
Sorry, just give me 1 sec.
Yeah, sure.
Crime of the Century is such an amazing fucking record.
It is.
Oh, my God.
It most definitely is.
I learned about that when I got into vinyl probably 10 years ago.
Yeah?
I just saw it at a used place. I'm like, fucking Supertramp. I don't know anything about Supertramp.
Yeah, right. Let's see what this is.
Holy fuck. Fire a couple bomb
Crime of the
hits.
Century, yeah. That was a not just a good album, but that was one of the albums that kind of put Supertramp in the spotlight.
I'd say. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like prior to that, it was just the few Brits that knew them and were like, oh, check this out. But then Crime of the Century kind of like elevated them to world-class status.
If anybody listening to this hasn't listened to that record, listen to it. But important, it's different than music now.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds super condescending. Is that, like I'm fucking telling people how to listen to music, is that records made in the 70s are absolutely pieces of art. You need to listen.
They're epic.
All of it.
They are epic.
From the beginning to the end.
That's right.
No
They're
shuffle.
masterpieces.
Yeah, you have to listen to the whole thing.
They're masterpieces. Even though an album may only have produced a couple of hits, that was just a radio thing.
Yep.
Not a quality thing, unlike today.
Right.
So, high school is done. I've had my taste of DJing. I'm now suddenly starting to tune into what music actually is in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get my first job out of high school because I said, school, we're done.
Okay.
Not interested. Pass. And I got a job at a record distributor.
Oh, yeah.
Millbank Industries in Montreal, which provided all of the labels of music for stores like Discus Records, which was kind of like a Sam the Record Man, but not Sam the Record Man. Like an A&B sound, but no stereos, just music. It supplied music for Discus, all the department store music departments.
Right.
Which back in the day, the Bay and
Sears
and all them, they all had their own record departments.
Yeah, they
which
sure
was
did.
Bizarre, because the only people who bought music from those places were adults, not kids. Kids went to real music stores to buy their music because there was more of it, more variety. So yeah, I'm working for Millbank Industries, and I'm seeing all this music, and they're just like looking at my bug eyes and going, hey, have you heard Joni Mitchell? And I'd be like, no. And they'd be like, all right, let's throw it on. I'm like, you could just grab music off the goddamn bins and throw it on the stereo. We could do whatever the hell we want.
Yeah,
it broke.
Right.
The package came undone. Oops. I'm like, okay, this is crazy.
Right.
Can I make like, what about this one? Oh, that's a really good one. And then, now my like, now it's almost like I'm going to music university. And I'm just like, you're paying me to take music from an order sheet Out of Bins. Oh, I think I want to listen to that one too. If they're ordering 100 of this, it must be good, right? Yeah, you want to hear that one too? Sure. And it was just like listening to music all day on this really nice stereo system in this little warehouse. And then I'd go and collect a paycheck every week from this place. Unfortunately, the job didn't last long because the music industry, at least providing music to stores, is very cyclical. In the summertime, there's really nothing happening. But in the wintertime, gift giving for Christmas, music sales go through the roof, or at least they did in the late 70s. So you had no trouble getting a job in this industry from September to April or even March. But in the summertime, it was kind of touch and go. So I got laid off from this Millbank Industries, but they gave me such a glowing reference that I was able to go down the street and get a job at Polygram Records, one of the labels that I was pulling off of Out of Bins for orders. And Polygram was an even bigger warehouse, and they didn't make their own vinyl. They got it made by Columbia. CBS Columbia pressed their vinyl for them, but they had their own pre-recorded tape factory in the back of the warehouse. Cool. It's too bad I didn't realize what I'd gotten myself into with that company, because we were allowed to buy albums at cost. And I never did, because I didn't have anything to play it on. I didn't have enough money to buy a stereo yet. So while all my peers were buying like dozens of albums a pay, I'd buy nothing. But again, all the music that this company made was playing over the professional PA system in the warehouse. And it was great. I continued helping my friend DJ when I could. My best friend started getting into car stereos, and he was installing like custom car stereos, ripping out the original stuff that came with the car and putting in like Blaupunk cassette stereos with, extra amplifiers and fucking high-end speakers and the whole 9 yards. And I never got into that, but boy, did he ever get into that. And he did that for years. That's all he did, was specialize in car stereo installs.
Yep.
And then he convinced me to join the military. And then on the day we were supposed to swear in and pledge allegiance to the crown, he never showed. So he leaves me high and dry at the recruiting center after convincing me to join and get a career, because neither of us wanted to go back to school.
Right.
So I went through with it. I didn't chicken out. I got in. I got into electronics. I became a technologist. And as soon as I had some money, I thought, let's buy some records. And I was voracious. And I'd spend all my free time at the record store and checking out what's new, and do I want that one? I don't know. It doesn't have a lot of hits on it. Yeah, I think I'll pass on that one for now. I was really prioritizing because I only had so much money to buy stuff. Bought myself a stereo, decent quality, but nothing extravagant. And I just slowly started building this massive collection of albums. And at what point, I think I remember having close to 150, 200 albums, which for somebody that never owned music in their life before was a feat of magic. And then they sent me on an exchange program. They said, hey, the unit you belong to, we got a thing going with the British signalers over in the UK, who are posted to Germany as part of the whole German foreign militaries will kind of like help kind of keep everything under control over here.
Yep.
With NATO and all that stuff. We get to send a few dozen Canadian soldiers over there to see how they do their thing, but in Germany. And I'm like, cool. How long's that going to last? Oh, a month. And I'm like, right on. This will be cool. So the whole time I'm over there, these British soldiers are showing me all the music they're listening to, which some similarities, but they had a shitload of music that they were totally into and tuned into that North America hadn't even heard of yet.
Right.
Things like Thomas Dolby and the Eurythmics and Howard Jones and Ultravox and all this new wave and digitally kind of synthesizer-y stuff, eh?
Yep.
And I was just blown away by this stuff. And I brought some back with me. And then I'd be going to the record stores and going, hey, you guys got any Eurythmics? Oh, that just came in. I haven't even listened to this yet. Put it on right now. I will change your life. Now I was knowing a little bit more about the music than the people who were selling it did.
Right.
And now I felt this kind of like, ooh, now I got the power. Now I'm a music guy now. And then what really kind of got me egotistical about my music was when people would come to me and say, hey, you know how the course that our friends are over here in the military are graduating from their course next week? Yeah. Well, they're having a party in this little kind of like military lounge that only gets opened when someone needs it for a party, and they need someone to play tunes for the party. Would you be interested? I'm like, what does it pay? All you can drink. I'm in. Drag the stereo system and all my albums over there and then play music for the night for all I could eat and all I could drink.
Right.
Then I started demanding cash. Oh, no problem. We'll just pass a hat around. Next thing I know, I've got cash in my pocket to buy more music.
Right.
And that's when it just like escalated out of control. I was actually talking to Darlene about this tonight. She goes, remember that inheritance that you spent all on DJ equipment? I go, mm-hmm. And it wasn't an inheritance. My grandfather had set up a trust fund for me for school.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't go to school. Didn't have to. Joined the military. They taught me what I needed to do for my next career. So once my grandfather realized I wasn't going to be using the money for school, he basically went, well, here's your $10,000. And I went, well, I guess I'm buying $10,000 worth of stereo equipment. So I kitted myself out with the best DJ equipment I could get my hands on, best value for the buck, and now I was set.
Sure.
Every gig I did, every dollar I made from it, bought more tunes. Another gig, bought more tunes. Next thing I knew, I had 60 milk crates filled with albums and singles. I was set. And then CDs came along. And I was like, okay, this is some kind of bullshit because
Right.
I've got all of this money invested in all of this vinyl, and now comes this little goddamn 5-inch disc that's got a whole album on it, can't get affected by its playback quality if it gets dust on it, like an album can, like vinyl can. Like the things we did to try to keep our vinyl clean so that it would sound good when you played it was insane. It was insane, now that I think back towards it. But the beautiful thing of it is that I was just reveling in every kind of music I could get my hands on. And I was wielding that musical knowledge and power and access and skill of putting music together to affect the people that were in the building, and that just made my day. It was like nothing else that I could describe, but the CD thing really threw a wrench for me because I was just like, if you're DJing, you've got to switch to CD. There was just, the logic behind it was a no-brainer. But how do you ditch $6,000 worth of music or $8,000 worth of music and then buy it all over again in a new format? And at that point, I just went, yeah, no, I can't do this.
Right.
So I sold the whole kit, music and all, equipment and all, and I used the money to buy myself a decent stereo and started a CD collection for myself.
Huh.
And this time I only bought the stuff that I liked as opposed to the stuff I needed to DJ with.
Right. That's a wild journey.
But it was, yeah, because it was like I went from 0 to 60 in a year.
Right.
In music. And then it was like, now I'm racing cars.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, okay, well, that was fun. I'm going to retire from racing now and just, buy a car that I like and sit back and enjoy it for a while. So, but I was still hooked. And then the MP3 started.
Can I,
Yeah.
You had said something earlier about Music University.
Yeah.
And, like your DJ buddy.
Yeah.
And it got me to thinking about people in my life who had exposed me to music. And I had a few people, but like 2 people, maybe 3 stand out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is my best friend's dad.
Right.
Dan Michael. He, like I said, he played in a jazz band.
Yeah.
And not old people jazz.
Right.
Like fucking wild, weird
Yeah.
shit. And he liked wild, weird music.
Right.
And he introduced me, his son introduced me to the shit that they were listening to.
Yeah.
And most of it was just incredible.
Yeah.
And like he taught me,
Do you remember any band names?
Tom Waits is probably the most prolific thing that like... And
He's out there.
Yeah,
He's out there.
And I was introduced to Tom Waits when I was 12 years old. And I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and other things like...
But it's an acquired taste.
Oh, absolutely. Well, yeah.
A lot of people think Tom Waits is
right.
too out there.
Yeah, well, those people are idiots. Japanese jazz. A band called Naked City. They was wild. But anyway, like Primus is...
Yes.
So just wild, weird music that no one listened to. And so he was probably the first professor,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah.
And then the other one that really stands out, Dan taught Nathan and I of how to appreciate music. And it gave us the skills to find our own, right? Our fingers were out in it.
Yeah.
We would go...
You got to see that there was more than what you heard on the radio.
We were...
Or even that your friends knew about.
Certainly that.
Yeah.
But more trusting our gut or our intuition to buy records that you have never heard of.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And
Which
when
I
you're...
loved to do.
Oh, yeah. Loved and hated.
Yeah.
What the fuck is this? Anyway, so that was foundational to my exploration of music is Dan. And then years later, as I had mentioned, I went to a lot of local rock shows and punk rock shows and stuff like that. And when I was working at the music store, I was introduced to quite a bit of music. And I was going to shows at that time, so I was I was huge into grunge and huge into punk rock. So I was a grunge punk rock kid. And then I started working at the music store. First hanging out at the music store, working for free, because I fucking hated high school too. And it was I just hung out at the store and did work for free until they gave me a job.
Right.
And in the morning, you can't play any music you want, because the mall is filled with old people.
Right.
So you can't fucking play anything.
You can't put Primus on.
No, you cannot. And so I started to get introduced to like music that a fucking teenage boy wouldn't, like in Calgary, wouldn't listen to.
Right.
So that just, again, opened my eyes to types of music, genres of music, and helped me realize further that I can like more than the things that I like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the Mavericks. I love the Mavericks.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
fucking country music,
Yeah.
but it's just fucking music for all occasions is
Right.
still one of my favorite albums.
Right.
Anyway, just all sorts of wild, weird shit.
Before I forget, what's your favorite Tom Waits song?
Oh man, I
want to see if
don't
it's
know.
similar to mine. I am obsessed
I don't.
with the song Step Right Up.
Oh, that's a good one.
I love that song.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Really good one.
love that song.
Give me one.
And it's not even like a regular song. It's just him riffing. Do 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 do. It's so amazing. But yeah, no, and you know what? It's this.
Oh, maybe Murder in the Red Barn.
Oh, I don't know if I've
Or
heard
Earth
that
Died
one.
Screaming. Basically anything off Bone Machine
Okay.
is...
You're
Bone
into
Machine
it.
was when I was introduced to it.
Hmm.
And that was in 92 was
Right.
when that album came out.
What?
But I liked older stuff too.
What
Anyway.
really, what took a long time for me to understand about music was that here I was being voracious about every new kind of artist that I had never heard before. And I didn't like them all, but I liked most of them, and I wanted to share them with other people. So while I was DJing, while I was doing my gigs on the bass at like now full-blown like ranks clubs, you know, where people went to actually get drunk and dance and party, I'd play the stuff that I knew was familiar to them, but then I'd sneak in stuff I knew they'd never heard before, hoping that they would go, oh my God. And unfortunately, it didn't always work out that way.
Right.
Because you'd have some people, and I'd watch, right? I'd be watching them in their seats, and the few that get on the dance floor, and they'd be like, the fuck is this? Right? And I'd be like, come on, come on, come on. This is good, right? And some would get into it, but many would not.
Right.
And I'd be like, oh, for fuck's sakes.
Right.
And then I'd have to go back to the mainstream stuff. And then, you know, just when they weren't looking again, I'd sneak another one in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I started getting good at it, but I also started taking more risks too. And then people started getting like, you know, aggressive about their dislike for some of the stuff that I was playing. Right. And I was just like, okay, don't worry. I'll get you back to your little pablum formula here in a second.
Right.
But, you know, expand your horizons, people.
Right.
But yeah. And of course, once my musical horizons had expanded far beyond mainstream music, radio just started sucking.
Oh yeah, radio's awesome.
Beyond description.
And it still does because of that.
Except for one station.
Here it comes. CFNY.
CFNY.
Oh, CFNY.
Toronto. The spirit of radio.
Oh, interesting.
Which incidentally is why that song by Rush is called The Spirit of Radio, because it's actually about that station.
Oh, that's cool.
They were the only station in Toronto that took a risk on little-known artists that they thought were fantastic and basically gave the finger to the program managers and said, no, fuck you. We'll play what we think people need to hear. And they made stars out of some Canadian artists.
It's interesting how you took your love for obscurity and wanted to show people, and because I did too, but mine wasn't from a enlightening them kind of place.
It
was more like no, it wasn't antagonistic.
Okay.
It was more just like I enjoyed when they liked it, but it was me.
This is what I like.
Yeah, and you
Fuck
have
you.
no fucking idea what this is.
Oh, okay, right.
But I do.
Right.
I know all about this band,
Right.
and I heard them a long time ago.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You're gonna hear them. You're gonna hear them next year on the radio. I know all about.
I already
them.
know about them.
And
Yeah.
I was a real cunt about it. And I know that. And in many ways, I still kind of am. I get off on knowing music and bands that nobody knows.
Yeah.
I love it. And
and I do too.
I like showing people.
I prefer to let other people in on it, though. That's the only thing.
It's not that I don't want to let people in on it necessarily, but it's for me. Like, I get off on it for sure. And them not knowing what it is, I really like. Like, when you said that now I know more than the people in the music stores, that's where I lived. That's what I loved, is knowing more about music than other people.
You worked with.
Or my peers, and people I worked with.
Yeah.
Like, it was a thing.
Yeah.
Which is just such a dick thing, but it was. It was, and it still is. Like, and I still find albums and music that people are like, what the fuck is this? Right. And I'm like, I don't know. but isn't it great?
Yeah, yeah.
But what I was going to say is that when I was working at the music store and that breadth of variety was opened up to me, that's where I met my second professor. And my second professor was the bass player from a band that I adored in the city.
Okay.
The bass player of a band called Huevos Rancheros.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Graham Evans. He started working at the record store. And I loved them before.
Yeah.
And him and I would just sit around and bullshit. Mm-hmm. And he would tell me stories. Huevos Rancheros they weren't huge.
No.
But they weren't small.
Right.
Like
they had a pretty big following here. Well, in Alberta.
They traveled internationally multiple times.
Did they?
Oh, yes. They were quite popular.
Never heard them on the radio, though.
No.
No. Maybe college radio.
Sure. Yeah. CGSW would have played the shit out of them.
For sure.
But this was when Calgary had an excellent music scene, known internationally for their music scene. Anyway, so
that would have felt good, having a band member of a band you really liked a lot working with you in a music store.
Yes. And then telling me road stories and introducing me to bands. And
now you know road stories about your favorite bands that you get to hold over other people.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you think you know Huevos Rancheros, do you?
Right.
Yeah, fuck you. I know
stories about getting drunk with Kurt Cobain and Mark Arm and just like, what the fuck? And him teaching me about bands like Tank Hog, and a band like the name of this band is about guys who would steal nitrous from a dentist and they would fucking get high on it and be like, "Don't be such a Tank Hog." Name of the band.
Perfect.
Shit like that.
Yeah.
And just stories about these bands that I didn't know of, or bands that I already really loved, but introduced me to more and more and more and more stuff. And I don't know if I would call him a professor, but it was just
He was your professor.
Yeah.
In music university.
Well, he was like the proverbial jock that you hang out with who fucking knows all the moves, and it was just like, yeah, man.
Stick with me, man. I'll tell you some stories.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Absolutely. And then, because he worked there, he got a girl from another band that I loved to work there. Her name was Alicia, and she played bass for a band called Placebo. And Placebo was a band that Leslie Feist used to sing for.
Right.
So here we go. Right. Listen to this. Listen to me. Like, I know Leslie Feist.
Okay.
I've talked to her multiple times. Wow. Like, she recognizes me.
Small
or
world.
Did, right?
Yeah.
But, oh man, it's just so wild. So it was really cool. Like, it was so cool. Those two people working there made that asshole bit that I was explaining earlier just fucking double, triple down. Like, I know people.
Yeah. I
know bands you've never heard of.
Yeah, I know
I got stories about these bands.
Yep.
Fuck you. Yeah. You like Pearl Jam, do you? Well, how about you suck my dick? Let me tell you something about Eddie Vedder. You know what I mean? And then just some 17, 18-year-old dweeb.
And that's pretty cool.
It was the coolest.
Yeah.
The fucking
I can't top that.
Coolest.
I can't top that.
It was really wild.
I mean, my biggest claim to fame with any kind of musician that was known was just accidentally running into Kim Mitchell
No.
in Toronto in the Beaches district, you know,
Right.
on Queen Street or whatever. And it's just like, hey!
Fucking
And he's
patio
like,
lanterns.
Hey, man. And just
Off he goes.
off he goes with his wife. And, yeah.
He is a wild party.
He is. He certainly is. But look at him now. I actually respect him more now than I ever did, because now he's kind of got like his own sort of music. He's got his own shows on the radio and stuff.
Does he?
Oh, yeah. He's a big, big deal on the national radio scene now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He's sort of like, he's kind of like a Howard Stern of music topics.
Canadian music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
On the radio.
Well, what?
It's bizarre.
Really? Because I know that there's What's His Nuts from...
Or at least he was. I don't know if
Yeah.
he's still doing it, but he definitely was doing it for the longest
Yeah, I don't remember this guy's name that I'm thinking of. Anyway.
But getting back to the topic of like trying to share the music that I had discovered with other people, when compact cassettes were a thing that I tried to leverage as much as I could, I was making I was the mixtape king
Right.
in my circle.
Sure.
I was the only one making them, and I made primo tapes. And what I would do is I would get to know somebody's taste in music, and then I would go, yeah. And they'd be like, yeah, what? And I'd be like, I'm going to make a mixtape for you, and you're going to fucking love it. And, you know, it would be like 1/3 music that I already knew they liked, perfectly interspersed with other music I knew they probably had not heard of before. And it worked. It worked like gangbusters.
Tapes were such a magnificent way to share music.
They were.
Because you had a finite amount of time.
Yeah.
Right? You had to fit all that you wanted to fit on fucking, what was it, 45 minutes?
Yeah, and it was the only way you could have done it up until then.
Right.
Like,
Right.
otherwise you had to like keep swapping records on your record player.
Right.
Now suddenly you could put a few of your favorite tunes on one thing.
Right.
And then play it. And after a while, I don't know if this was your experience, but after a while, if fucking, I don't know, a Foreigner song blended into a goddamn ZZ Top song or whatever, all of a sudden now that song belonged with the other song. As soon as you
Yeah.
heard that Foreigner song
yeah.
end, immediately you heard the ZZ Top song beginning in your head
All the
because
time.
it always belonged together because of your mixtape.
And you played the shit out of it.
You did.
You played it until it didn't
broke.
play. Until it
Until
didn't
it
play.
broke.
Yeah.
And
Until you're rewinding it with your pencil and it
that's right.
snapped at the end.
That's right.
No!
It was, and it's like, it's very similar to the phenomenon that you mentioned earlier. And I think, like, I don't want to make it sound like the only great music that was ever made was made in the 70s, because of course that's not true.
Of course.
But when people bought albums on 33 1/3 vinyl, they didn't just listen to the song they heard on the radio.
Right.
They dropped the needle on the first track and they listened to the whole side and they reveled in it. And then they took the needle off at the end of the groove, flipped it over and dropped it on the first track of the second side, and then reveled in that too. And then at the end of it, everybody was like, well, that was cool. Because you were no longer playing songs, you were playing albums.
Yep.
And the albums were very often thematic.
Yep.
And there was a structure to it. And the songs almost seemed like they were in the perfect order, even by side. Because you'd have a grandiose opening or a subtle opening, and then things got wild in the middle of the side, and then at the end they kind of like petered out, and then you flip the side, and it was like another journey. Oh, okay, now let's go in a different direction.
So common that the last song on the first side was always like,
Yeah. What the hell was that?
That wasn't
Dark
the greatest
Side
song.
of the Moon. Perfect example.
Right.
The last song on the first side was Great Gig in the Sky. And you listened to it and you went, what in God's name was that?
Right.
Because it was nothing but piano and a woman going, ah, ah, right? And then you flip it over and
Strap in, motherfucker.
Doon, ding, 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 and it's
Yeah.
like, whoa,
Yeah, look at that.
here
Look
we
at
go.
Goosebumps. Just
Goosebumps.
fucking happened.
Right.
Because that's just,
Right.
like, that's fucking art.
It's
and
classic.
that's what, this is the cantankerous old man talk. Here it comes. Is that I hate music that comes out now because of that.
It's missing that element.
Because you don't,
There's no journey anymore.
there's no journey in it. Nobody, not nobody.
Fast
it's
food.
Right. It's very infrequent that someone listens to a record all the way through.
No, yeah.
An album all the way through.
Exactly.
And when you do, like when I do, because I'm still a bit of a zealot about that.
Right.
I do, and it's unsatisfying because they're not built the same.
No,
way
they're not.
at all.
Nope.
No, and that
It's hits with filler
right.
most of the time.
Agreed. And that the beauty of the album existed all the way probably until the year 2000.
Yeah.
It's the last 20 years it's sort of become just consumption.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not to say that, because my 70s for you was the 90s. Grunge music. Like that was my time.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to suggest that music now is better or worse than, because it's music, it's art, there's good and there's bad.
I still like some new artists.
Yeah.
I just don't like all
Most
of
of
their stuff.
Right. Right.
I'm very selective about,
right.
that, okay, I connect with that. All right, let's listen to that some more. Let's go see what else they made. I forgot what else they made.
Yep.
Yeah, no. And now I understand why I never got that song, because I don't like it. Don't like the rest of that album either. Don't like any of that album, But, it's kind of interesting that we got onto the topic or the subject of, or the groove, see what I did there? Of when we were listening, when we bought albums on vinyl, we would listen to them from beginning to end. Always, you would never throw an album on and just listen to your favorite songs.
No, that's weird.
Ever.
No.
You just didn't.
Right.
It was a soundtrack to your life.
Yeah.
And your parties and everything else. Which is, I think, now that I think about it, why vinyl made a comeback. Because whenever somebody would talk to someone about that wonderful album they used to listen to in the 70s or the 80s or whatever, they'd be like, yeah. And they would remember what a wonderful journey it was to listen to the whole damn album, but it wasn't the same unless you threw it on a record player and put the needle on the beginning of the side and just let it go. Unlike a CD even, where you put it in the drawer of a machine and then you're listening to a song for a few seconds and go, next, 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 next.
Yeah. See, we didn't do that because, like I said, vinyl wasn't a thing until I was older. Like, older as in, like, my 30s. I didn't get into vinyl. So CDs were it.
Right.
But CDs were song 1 to song 12.
Even on a CD.
Always.
For you. Yeah.
Always.
You'd listen
and
to the
even the
whole
song
thing.
you didn't like.
Really?
It's part
You
of
just-
it was
that's
part of the
part of the
plan,
album.
man.
Let
It's
it
part,
go. Let it
it's
go.
part of the plan.
Huh.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was
Interesting.
this attempt to romanticize the art of it, but like these people put this effort into this
whole
whole
album.
thing.
Right.
This whole fucking thing.
Right.
The least I can do is to endure 3 minutes of a song that I'm not a huge fan of.
Right.
When the other 48 minutes is astounding. Or even very good. But, yeah. But I see what you're saying. Because you definitely didn't do that with a record. And you could with a CD, but we never did.
And I did with a CD, but the only time I ever did, and you're going to find this funny, was when I said to my wife, very early in our relationship, in our marriage, I said, hey, you know what would be fun? She's like, what? And I said, how about an hour before we're ready to go to bed, I put the boombox on the dresser in the bedroom, and we just lie back, and I put on one of my favorite albums, and we listen to it from beginning to end. And then we'll talk about it. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, oh, right? It's like, oh my God, I get to show her all my favorite music.
Right.
And I was playing, Floyd albums and Supertramp albums and Steely Dan albums and Styx albums and all the really wonderful masterpieces that I was raised on as a teenager.
Yep.
And in my early 20s. And I got to do that all over again. But it's the only time I have ever
All the way through.
played CDs all the way through.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. That's really interesting.
Not even in my car. I couldn't even endure listening to a whole CD in my car, because at this point now I think I was starting to get antsy about give me variety.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, once things started coming out on MP3 and you could actually get them for free, and pirating suddenly became this huge thing amongst the internet, the early internet user community. Again, the I couldn't stop myself. Every free moment of my day was spent downloading fucking music off of IRC, and then, Napster and LimeWire and the whole 9 yards. And all through that, I kept saying, God damn it, record companies, can you not just put everything online and charge us so much dollars a month and just give us everything? Give me everything so that I can see what's out there without having to buy it all again. Again. You got enough of my goddamn money from this,
Vinyl to the
60
CDs
crates of albums that I had and singles to I think at my peak, I ended up buying close to 700 CDs.
Right.
And then I stopped because I just couldn't stand spending any more money on music just in time for pirate copies to show up. And I mean, yeah, I know MP3s are not, the as good a quality as the real thing, but fuck it, they're good enough for me.
Absolutely.
Until you guys get off your high horse and give me the world of music for X dollars a month, we're done. You cannot have any more of my money.
I wonder if that's where mine came from too, my adoption of MP3. Sure, it was combined with the fact that now I'm a computer geek. I'm on the computer.
Yeah.
And that's just
Totally.
where I spend my time.
Yeah.
So digital, changing a
It's
CD
part
in your
of the
fucking
culture.
in your CD-ROM is not
Yeah.
really a fucking thing you're gonna do.
Nope.
But also, I did have a very large CD collection, and it was
So you've
now
already spent a shitload of money
Right.
on music.
and I was young, and now listening to music on CD or with CD has become very inconvenient. Frankly,
yeah,
right?
totally.
It was just inconvenient.
Yeah.
Because I'm in front of my computer.
And everything is on it.
Everything is on it. So that's how MP3s became a thing so prolific in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just don't have any more money.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I had people, friends of mine, who would go, so you're pirating music off the internet? Yes, I am. And you don't feel bad about that? Absolutely not. Curious, do you buy movies? Yes, I do. A lot? Oh yeah, shit tons. Okay, how come you're not pirating movies? Well, that's a funny question, and I think I've got a kind of a funny answer. It may not make sense to you, but it works for me. In my world, a movie lasts at least an hour and a half to 2 hours. Number one. It's a long serving of entertainment. And it's visual. So it's like music, but better. Because now your eyes are involved. Okay? So stick with me.
Yeah.
And when you buy a movie, you're not just getting the movie, you're getting the story about the movie packaged with the movie. So how they made it, how they hired everybody that stars in it, all the stupid mistakes they made when they made the movie. There's a story about the movie packaged with the movie. For $20 a crack, that's good value for my dollar. On the music side of the equation, $20 just gets me 35 fucking minutes of music. And that's it. And I'm sorry, but it's not worth $20. When you compare the two,
Right.
you're getting value for your dollar, but not on the music side of house. So I'm like, maybe if the record company could actually make the album more interesting and include more than just the music that they made, and maybe include some outtakes and some first drafts, you know, the first, what do they call them?
Demos?
Demo tracks and stuff like that. It might be more interesting. Maybe throw in a few interviews with the artist. How did you guys come up with the idea for this album? How did you guys form? This is your first record. But tell us about yourselves. That could make the album a bit more interesting, have a lot more content, and maybe be worth the $20. But until that day, not interested. I paid my dues. I spent a shit ton, and then you abandoned that entire music format.
Yep.
And forced me to what, start all over again? No, not doing it. Because you're going to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't respect me. How the hell
Why should I keep
respect you?
shelling my hard-earned money out to you guys?
Because you changed your mind.
Yeah. So, of course, now, of course, streaming sort of solves all of that. And for, you know, a fixed amount of money per month, subject to inflation, we have now become, you know, fast food entertainment junkies.
It's so weird that that's...
Because we can have anything we want now,
right, because
pretty
it's
much.
like utopia of what you wanted.
And
it is
we don't
utopia.
know what to do with it.
It's just too much.
It is.
Like I said,
It truly
saturated.
is.
It's too much.
It truly is.
You don't have to work for your music anymore. And it turns out that $20 was worth that. Is you had to work for your music.
True.
So it had a payoff.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It's a factor
payoff
that you could have never have factored that cost in.
And not only that,
There's that satisfaction.
We've become, the music is so accessible now. We've become, I love where this conversation has gone. It's just so perfect. We've become music snobs now because I will find myself hearing a song that I've asked Apple to add to my collection.
Mm-hmm.
And after hearing it for the second time in a week, go, screw that song. I want it gone. I don't want to hear it again. I'm tired of it. I heard it twice now in the week, and I don't want to hear it again.
Right.
I just don't. Or, and I'll actually get rid of some music that way. I'll actually kick it out of my collection. Or again, you know, I'll be listening to a song on the car. And especially when Darlene's with me, she just doesn't get it. She doesn't understand how fast food it's gotten. A song will come on, and I'll get like 5 or 10 seconds into it, and then I'll just hit the next button. And she'll go, "What did you do that for?" And I'm just like, "I'm just not into this right now. I need something else." And that wasn't it. And sometimes it'll drive her nuts because I won't just go skip. Oh, yeah, okay, that'll do. I'll be like, skip, nope. Skip.
Oh,
nope.
yeah.
Skip. Nope. Skip. Nope. Skip. And she'll go, "Will you fucking let a song play already?" Just like, and I'll finally land on one and go, "That one will do," and then I'll let it play through.
Yep. I'm the exact same way. And it all started with MP3s. Yeah.
Like no one could have even fathomed that kind of music listening behavior 50 years ago.
All facilitated by accessibility.
Yeah. It's nuts.
Here's everything.
Here's everything.
I don't want it now. It's too much.
Here's everything. Good luck.
I don't want it.
Welcome to Ponderosa.
Yeah, take shit away
You're
from me.
going to feel like shit when this is over.
Yeah, man. Those meatballs aren't good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
it's
where
really...
we are.
We are. We absolutely are.
That's where we are.
And it drives me nuts. And what I find that I do now, and I think we've talked about this before, is that I rarely listen to current music.
Mm.
I will discover music that was before my time or in genres I hadn't previously explored in my life.
Yeah.
Like funk or soul.
Yeah.
Or fucking music from other countries.
Right.
That is what and it's all shit from the 60s, 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
So I am listening to shit I've never heard of before.
Yep.
And it's fucking wild.
And probably no one else has listened to
sure,
it ever
which
or in a long time.
Which feeds my, you don't know shit, you dicks.
I got more on you now, dickheads.
Exactly. But it also feeds that lust for an album of art. First, second song, third song, the whole thing. Because that's how they were built.
So if I could give you a radio show on college radio, and the format was pick an album, play it, and talk through it if you want, or discuss it at the end, would that be like the coolest job ever for you?
No.
Really?
Because I've been spoiled with the next.
Okay.
It would be so hard. Because there's this sense of anxiety right. But there's a sense of anxiety that still exists. I don't know if anxiety is the right word, but I'm just going to use it as when you're showing somebody music and you know it's a little weird. Like you know it's weird.
Right.
And you are worried that they're going to think it's really weird.
Right.
And they're not going to enjoy it.
Right.
So I make decisions for them that it's not good.
Okay.
So I hit next.
Okay.
And I move on.
Yeah, that one's not so great, but this one's better.
Right. Maybe it's not the right one.
Yeah. This next one should be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I get like performance anxiety. That's what it is. So would I enjoy that? I don't think so. Okay. I don't think I would. I don't think I could do it. I could talk through music that I don't really care about. Mm-hmm. But showing music that I care about, I find to be more difficult.
So let me ask you this. You say that you continue to search for stuff you have not listened to before.
Yeah.
From previous generations and even from outside of our own musical culture. Mm-hmm. How do you find this stuff?
Reddit has been a big place to find it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'll go to genre subreddits, like stoner rock or jazz or even just music.
And read...
No, just somebody posts
hey,
something.
Have you guys listened to this?
Yeah, there's r/listen to this is a subreddit. And people will be like, whoop, put this up. And you listen to it and you're like, that is fucking awful. Or like, the fuck? Oh, and you check it out.
Wow.
And then you go into the comment thread and be like, what else is like this? And there's always some fucking nerd in there that knows everything about every band that even sort of sounds like that. And it's absolutely community based.
Wow.
That's how I discover music now.
I was really lucky for the longest time until this schmuck retired from doing this. And then I was just like livid because I was like, how the fuck am I going to find my new music now? But there was a journalist, a music journalist that wrote for, I think, the Toronto Star. And his name, I believe, was John Yakamoto? I think. I know it's John, but it might not be Yakamoto, but something very similar to that. And he reveled in, hey, you should check out this album, this artist, blah, blah, blah. I'll tell you a little bit about them, why I think they're so special, yada, yada. And then I would just go race online and try to find a digital copy of what he was talking about. Listen to the song he mentioned as the okay, let's give this a taste. And if it's really scrumptious, then I'll look into this artist more. And he helped me to discover a whole bunch of artists that I had never heard of before and would probably never hear of again, because they were mostly artists that you would never have heard outside of college radio, if at all.
Right. John Sakamoto.
Yeah, and
Not a T and S. I just looked it up. John Sakamoto.
Sakamoto. Okay, that's what was good. That's what I was going to guess next. It just didn't sound right in my ear, in my head. But yeah, he was phenomenal.
John Sakamoto's hit list.
Yep, that's it. That's what I would go to
Anti-hit
every week.
list.
The anti-hit list.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Weekly top 10 songs from outside the mainstream.
You got it.
Yeah.
He was fantastic. I was addicted to that anti-hit list. It helped me discover so many artists I'd never heard of before, and yeah, so happy. Like Over the Rhine, yeah, just such incredible artists from the States and Europe and Canada and just around the world. So many different genres too. But guess how I'm discovering music now?
How's that?
And even enjoying music more than I ever have before. YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Live performances on YouTube.
Oh, interesting.
That guy that you told me about that's making the tracks as he goes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd already seen one of his videos already, so I already knew who you were talking about as soon as I looked him up.
Right.
How to funk in 2 minutes or less.
Yeah.
I already seen that video, and I was like, that was cool. But then I started watching more of his videos.
Mark Robier.
Yeah, Mark Robier. And I started watching a couple more of his performances, and I was like, man, this guy is good.
He's wild.
This guy is good. I've even added a couple of his songs to my rotation. And because it's just, some of them are funny.
Oh, yeah.
Too. Like, I almost wonder if he's being ironic in some of the pieces that he puts together, because
I think so. Yeah.
They're funny.
They're just funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I'll just love to see an artist put on an intimate live performance. I started getting into. Have you ever heard of NPR? Mm-hmm. And Tiny Desk. Tiny Desk. Oh my God!
I forgot about that.
Tiny Desk.
Tiny Desk is a good spot.
Another source of artists I'd never heard before.
Yeah.
And I started listening to some of these artists, and you know what the worst part about listening to Tiny Desk concerts is that they were just so laid back and stripped down, and pure creativity and artistry, and no effects or
pageantry
or amplitude.
Sure.
That I'd listen to them, go, oh my God, these people are amazing. And then I'd go and listen to their professionally produced music and go, what the living fuck is this?
Right.
I want what I just heard at that Tiny Desk concert. I don't want the dressed up version of that song, which is how I fell in love with that band Khruangbin from the States, the trio. The guy on the guitar, he's got kind of a Middle Eastern influence. And the black drummer.
Yeah.
Because their regular music sounds just like the Tiny Desk concert.
Yeah.
It's identical.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing else to it.
Yeah.
It's that simple. It's that basic.
A real cool experience I had with Tiny Desk, and it's like that, and just finding weird bands and you'd fall into, is that I found a woman who sang, and she just blew me away in her ability to sing. It was beautiful. It blew me away.
Yeah.
And I went to my wife, and I'm like,
check this out.
She's like, yeah, that's Lizzie. I'm like,
what?
Yeah. She's like, oh yeah, she's hugely popular.
You're talking about Lizzo?
Lizzo.
Yeah.
Lizzo. And I
haven't even heard her yet.
Oh man, it was so
I've heard of her.
Yeah.
But I haven't taken the time
the Tiny
to
Desk is
listen to her
really
stuff.
good. Really good.
I'll have to check
and the albums,
Tiny Desk
and her albums
first.
are fun. I don't know if I would have liked it had I not seen the Tiny Desk.
Which is why I should probably listen to that first.
It's happened to me twice, I think, maybe even 3 times, where I listen to Tiny Desk and I'm just blown away by this band, and I mention it to my wife to be like, Joe, can check this out. She's like, yeah.
By the way, for our listeners who have no idea what we're talking about, NPR, National Public Radio in the United States, they had this guy in the Washington D.C. office, and he decided that what he wanted to do was he wanted to invite artists that were both known and unknown, that he thought were amazing, and say, hey, if you're ever in Washington, D.C., drop by our offices, and we've got an empty cubicle here, just set up in the cubicle.
And play 3 songs.
And play 3 songs.
Yep.
Any songs you want. And then see ya. And, the only people that'll be there to listen to you are the staff that work there in the NPR office. And it became a phenomenon because even people who had like extravagant production values in their music had to come completely stripped down, just the bare minimum of instruments and amplification equipment, and play live. No holds barred.
Yes.
And you got to literally be introduced to the artist and the core essence of the music that they had made. And it was just the most amazing thing. And it became a runaway success.
Yeah, there's quite a few international artists that I've fallen for with that. Like a number of them. Yeah, it's really very good.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it.
So if you've got a taste for some new music, man, go on YouTube and look up Tiny Desk. You will be amazed. You might not like everything because it's very worldly.
Yep.
It's everything under the sun and then some. Everything under the sun. From the most bizarro trios and solo performances to full-on 8-person fucking jazz funk extravaganzas. I discovered who's that black artist that also collaborates with a lot of other artists? Caesar. He has a hit called Japanese Denim. Something Caesar. Anyway, phenomenal artist.
Cool.
And I never would have discovered him except for Tiny Desk.
Right.
Never would have heard of him. Ever. In the history of ever.
That's
It's
so
just
cool.
unbelievable.
That's so cool.
It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really neat.
That was a good discussion.
Mm-hmm.
This could be like my favorite episode ever. Until the next one. Oh, man. Thanks for your stories, Adam.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciated that.
Yeah, that was cool. It was nice to. Well, it was a bit on the spot at the first, so I was just dumping.
Yeah.
And then as you started going, I'm like, oh yeah, right. I've had some pretty interesting experiences through music, as well. Yeah, that was cool.
And can't tell you what our next episode's going to be about because we haven't even discussed it yet. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Make sure you tell all your friends.
Yeah, start telling your friends.
Yeah,
Come on. This is some good shit. This is some quality, primo entertainment.
We should be the ones doing all the work here.
Yeah.
Don't just be listeners. Be
Participants
in our podcast. Spread the word.
The gospel.
The
Talkbots.
Yeah. Talkbots.
Talkbots. Whoop, beep, whoop, 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 whoop.
Later.
Bye.